Shiki was just an average delinquent who had been expelled from school, but when a mysterious stranger attacks him and kills his father, he learns that he has demon blood in his veins and decides to master his powers to get revenge. Long ago, a race of demons called Oni lived in Japan, destroying everything and killing humans as they pleased. No one could dare to stand up against them. But then a brave man named Momotaro emerged as humanity's savior. He attacked the base of the Oni, killing thousands of them. But that was just the beginning of a long war between Momotaro and the Oni that continues even in the modern age. Unaware of how this old fairy tale is linked with his destiny, a teenager named Shiki is cleaning his firearm collection while talking to a friend on the phone. He laughs about the fact that he recently got expelled from school because of a fight and says that he doesn't even mind it because he was sick of seeing the ugly face of his classmates each day. Just then, his adoptive dad Tsuyoshi arrives there and hits him on the head, demanding him to explain why he got expelled from the school. Shiki tells him to leave him alone, and Tsuyoshi moves ahead to hit him one more time for being an ungrateful bastard. But Shiki dodges him this time. Tsuyoshi then asks Shiki what the hell is up with all these guns because they run a wine shop and not a gun shop. Shiki taunts him that the wine shop is barely running because everyone knows that he is losing customers. Tsuyoshi claps back, mocking him for acting so high and mighty after being expelled from school, and Shiki takes it personally. He says that he will never become a loser like Tsuyoshi, and he is really relieved that they are not related by blood. That hurts the old man's feelings, but then he heads downstairs because of a business call. Tsuyoshi leaves for a delivery, and Shiki sighs, wishing that some rich man had adopted him instead. He then tries to practice his aim, but an explosion outside the house startles him. He goes outside to see what is happening, but a dense fog blocks his view. Suddenly, a gust of strange black mist shoots out of the fog and Shiki falls back in shock. The mist follows him, grabbing his leg and dragging him outside before dropping him on the street. As Shiki gets up and wonders what the hell is happening, a scary old man dressed in white appears there, ready to attack him. However, the very next moment, Tsuyoshi returns there and he rams his car into the attacker before telling Shiki to get into the car. He drives away as fast as he can, saying that their only option is to leave the country now. However, Shiki has still not processed what just happened. He asks his dad how could he just kill someone with his car, but Tsuyoshi tells him that the man is not dead yet, and they need to get as far away from him as they can. He is really distressed and tells Shiki to listen to him carefully, as they don't have much time. Tsuyoshi tells Shiki that he is a descendant of the Oni, and the guy who just attacked him is the descendant of Momotaro. Shiki tells him to stop joking because it is not the time for that, but Tsuyoshi tells him that he is serious. Just then, a blade made of black mist penetrates the car's roof, and Tsuyoshi barely dodges it. He realizes that the attacker has caught up to them, and then suddenly, the windows of their car are covered by black mist, completely blinding them. Tsuyoshi stops the car near an abandoned warehouse and quickly gets out of it, telling Shiki that they need to hide immediately. Just then, the car explodes, and when Tsuyoshi turns back, he finds that Shiki is missing. Luckily, he sees a trail of black mist entering the warehouse and realizes that his son has been taken there. Inside the warehouse, Shiki finds himself trapped in a giant web made out of the black mist, with a scary guy named Samadare standing in front of him. Samadare tells Shiki that the Oni blood in his veins makes him nothing but a pest, and exterminating such pests is the job of the Momotaro agency. Shiki is still in shock that Samadare survived being crushed by a car, but just then Tsuyoshi comes there, telling him that the fairy tale of Momotaro is a real story. He says that for thousands of years, Momotaro and Oni have been at war with each other through their descendants who share their blood. Eventually, the Momotaro descendants joined hands and formed the Momotaro agency, gaining advantage in the battle and forcing the Oni to hide among humans to survive. Shiki still can't understand what is happening, but Tsuyoshi tells him to let Daddy handle it. Samadare suddenly creates two swords out of black mist, and in response, Tsuyoshi also unleashes the same ability to fight him. The two men dash towards each other, clashing their blades and releasing a powerful shockwave. Tsuyoshi somehow pushes Samadare back, but he calls him weaker than he used to be back then. Samadare explains that the black mist is the unique ability only the descendants of Momotaro can use, and Tsuyoshi was once his senior in the Momotaro agency. Shiki is aghast on learning that his dad is a descendant of Momotaro, but Tsuyoshi says that he has forgotten about that entirely. Samadare asks him if he has also forgotten how dangerous Oni are. He declares that for the crimes of sheltering an Oni, Tsuyoshi will also be eliminated. Tsuyoshi responds by attacking him first, but he and Samadare are equally matched in strength. Shiki can only watch their crazy fight in bewilderment, while Samadare asks Tsuyoshi why is he protecting a monster who only lives for destruction. Tsuyoshi tells him to shut up and tries dealing serious damage to him, but Samadare is much faster than he expected. He easily dodges the attack and then hits Tsuyoshi with a super fast combo, severely injuring him and knocking him out. Shiki is devastated on seeing his dad bleed out, and he curses Samadare, saying that he will kill him. Samadare, however, tells him that he is going to go to the afterlife with his dad soon. Just then, Tsuyoshi grabs his feet and Samadare asks him why is he going this far to protect an Oni, and he replies that he needs no reason to protect his son. He says that Shiki has not harmed anyone yet, and it is wrong to kill him just because he has Oni blood. Samadare just creates a black mist sword to finish him off, and the rage boiling inside Shiki finally hits its limit. As his eyes turn red, he swears that he will kill the bastard who is trying to hurt his dad, and his demonic powers awaken. He starts bleeding from every pore of his face, and his demonic horns sprout out of his head. Shiki yells that he will kill Sameder, and when the man turns around to see him, he finds that Shiki is no longer restrained by the web. The very next moment, a bunch of guns made out of blood pop up next to his face, but thanks to his quick reflexes, he manages to block all the shots. However, Shiki has already moved on from that location, and while Sameder wonders where he is hiding, he notices blood dripping from the rooftop where Shiki is hanging upside down like a deranged Batman. Seeing his blood-covered form, Sameder realizes that Shiki has awakened, and now he can fight by manipulating his blood. But that is not even the scariest thing about fighting an Oni. Suddenly, Shiki lunges towards him, pushing him back with his powerful stripes. Sameder quickly flips the table on him, slashing his arm off, but Shiki jumps back and instantly regrows his arm. He then screams madly and Sameder begins to sweat because he realizes that this fight is not going to be easy. Shiki manifests his power in the form of numerous guns made out of blood, and Sameder is forced to use all his strength and speed to block the bullets. Just then, Shiki fires a freaking missile at him, and thanks to his instincts, Sameder dodges it by a very small margin, and the rocket explodes behind him. The old man is forced to run away from Shiki's ruthless assault, but then he throws his sword at him, hoping to take him down quickly. However, that is not nearly enough as Shiki quickly reaches him and kicks him away. Sameder is too tired and injured to move fast enough, and Shiki steps on his face before unloading a full military battalion worth of ammo on his ass. However, Sameder somehow manages to get away with his life, even though he is terribly injured. He curses Shiki, but then suddenly, Shiki collapses and the guns made of blood shatter. His Oni transformation is undone, and as he stares at his bloody hands, Shiki loses his mind, wondering what the hell just happened here. Sameder recalls this as a typical reaction of people who awaken their Oni powers for the first time. With his remaining power, he summons a black mist sword again, deciding to finish his job right now. However, just as he is about to stab Shiki, Tsuyoshi jumps in between them, sacrificing himself to save his son. Sameder asks him how he could risk his life to save the boy, even after seeing the monster he became. Tsuyoshi just thinks of how Shiki was a cute little boy and tells his old friend that it was not a bad thing to be a happy father, even if it was for a short period. Just then, some civilians gather at the site after hearing the explosion and call the fire department, and Sameder decides to retreat for now. He turns into black mist and vanishes, leaving the injured Tsuyoshi and the confused Shiki alone. Shiki panics and tells his dad that he will call an ambulance, but he asks him to stop because he knows this is the end. He just wants to talk to his son one last time at the end. Tsuyoshi tells him that he could never tell him about his Oni lineage because that would mean telling him that there are people out to kill him. But now, he can only ask Shiki to become strong enough to defeat both Momotaro and Oni so that he can live freely and happily. However, Shiki shouts at him to shut up because he is not done with him yet. He begins taking him outside, saying that they will talk after he gets better, and Tsuyoshi just smiles at him once before breathing his last. As he falls to the ground, Shiki loses his mind. He tries to wake him up first, and then starts crying uncontrollably. Soon after that, a man on roller skates arrives there, and when Shiki turns around to see him, he knocks him out with a single tap to his head, before taking him away to a place where Oni like him can become stronger. While he is unconscious, Shiki dreams of the happy moments when he used to play in the park under his dad's watchful eyes. But then the dream turns dark abruptly, with Tsuyoshi dying at Sameder's hand. Shiki wakes up with a jolt as he stares into the bloodshot eyes of Sameder. But when he looks around, he finds himself gagged and tied to a chair in a large empty hall. Right behind him, the skater guy who kidnapped him is doing one-arm handstand push-ups with his umbrella, and he gets back on his feet as soon as he sees Shiki awake. The edgelord introduces himself as Nato, a fellow Oni, and quickly manifests his horns. Shiki is too confused by everything, and he can't even pay attention to Nato, who refuses to tell him where they are right now. He informs him that his dad's body is stored safely in another place, and he brought him here for retrieval and evaluation. Nato then suddenly skates to the whiteboard in the corner and drags it closer to Shiki, before flexing how fast and efficient it is to use roller skates instead of walking. Next, he begins explaining the Momotaro agency to Shiki, saying that he has already seen one guy who can control the black mist and use it like a weapon. The Momotaro agency finds and hunts Oni, and in response, the Oni created their own agency to fight back. Nato says that his job is to find newly awakened Oni like Shiki and bring them to a safe place where he can evaluate if they are worthy of joining the Oni agency. With that brief intro, he puts the whiteboard back in its place and then removes Shiki's gag so that he can interview him. As soon as he removes the gag, Shiki starts yelling at him to free him. He also curses Nato, threatening to kill him if he has harmed his dad's body, and Nato immediately deducts a point from his score that is already 0. He calls Shiki a moron for not understanding what safely stored means because he mentioned it a couple minutes earlier. Shiki gets mad at him and says there is no way he can trust a shady edgelord like him, and Nato wasn't expecting anything else from him. He decides to deduct more points from Shiki's score the more he curses and demands to be set free, telling him to cooperate if he wants to pass the evaluation. Shiki doesn't give a shit about the evaluation, but he wants to be free quickly, so he tries holding his anger. However, he can't even do that properly, and Nato tells him to stop giving him the creepy look. Shiki snaps on hearing this, and Nato decides to evaluate him using a non-standard method because normal things don't seem to work with nutjobs. He takes off his tie, and before Shiki can even realize what is going on, Nato uses the tie to strangle him with his full strength. Shiki panics as he loses his breath, and Nato says that a creature's true nature is revealed when it is close to death, and that is what he wants to see. Shiki tries to resist with his full strength, but he can't get out of the chokehold even after bleeding from every hole on his face. He soon loses consciousness, and Nato is disappointed in him, but the blood that Shiki just lost awakens as a result of its power. It turns into sharp spikes and attacks Nato, who dodges the attack without much difficulty. Suddenly, he finds a Gatling gun made of blood pointing at his head, and behind it, Shiki is in his berserker state. He opens fire at Nato, and then backs away after he is satisfied. But his attacks didn't even touch the edgelord, who protected himself by coating his umbrella in his blood. He deducts 100 points from Shiki's score because he doesn't even know how to use his Oni blood, and then decides to show him how it is actually done, even though he won't remember anything once the berserker state ends. Shiki suddenly lunges towards him, but Nato is prepared for everything, and a few minutes later, Shiki regains his consciousness, lying defeated on the ground. He can't understand what just happened, but then he looks at his red hands and panics, realizing that he went out of control again. Nato calmly sits on top of him, saying that it is natural that his memory is a blank, because when an Oni goes into berserk mode, they lose their mind. Around them, the hall is a total mess as a result of their fight, and Shiki tells Nato to stop lecturing him when he is also using his blood as a weapon. Nato immediately makes his blood umbrella disappear, telling Shiki that he never went berserk because he can actually control his power. He then declares that there is nothing to be said anymore because Shiki is disqualified from joining the Oni agency. Shiki still has no idea what the hell is happening, but if there is one thing he knows for sure, it is that Nato is ridiculously strong. He decides to swallow his pride and begs Nato to take him as his underling because he wants to get stronger and avenge his dad. Nato immediately refuses his request, telling Shiki that someone like him who doesn't use his brain while fighting is always the first person to die in a real battle. He calls him a useless disgrace who can neither control his brain nor his power, and Shiki uses every ounce of his strength to hold back his rage. Nato then declares that it is time for him to dispose of Shiki, because a berserk Oni is a liability to everyone. He uses his special ring to cut his thumb, letting a stream of blood trickle out. He turns the blood into an umbrella, and Shiki suddenly gets an idea about how to make him change his mind. He runs away from Nato's range, and then dashes towards him while dragging his fist on the ground till it bleeds. Nato quickly turns his umbrella into a spiky shield that will protect him from any melee attack, and then calculates the possible moves Shiki can use. Shiki jumps up at the last moment, which was among the possibilities that Nato calculated, but then he surprises him by using the spikes to jump to the side and point a bloody gun at his face. Shiki puts all his focus into the gun, shooting a powerful shot with the recoil, sending him flying backwards. He can't believe that he managed to land a hit on Nato, but it turns out that he couldn't do it even this time. Nato simply blocks the blood bullet with his finger and shatters it, not giving Shiki any credit for the attack because he went halfway to berserk mode in order to attack him. As Shiki seems to lose his mind again, Nato decides to finish him off with his special move. He puts himself in a protective cage and summons archers made using his blood, ready to shoot at his command. However, as he notices Shiki fighting back against his berserker instincts and getting his power under control, Nato cancels his special move. Shiki is proud that he managed to control his power, but he falls on the ground because he just used up too much energy. Nato can't believe that not only Shiki controlled his powers, but he also suppressed berserker mode, which is not something everyone can do. He asks him how the hell did he do that, but Shiki smugly tells him to accept him as his underling to unlock the answer. Nato tells him that he will think about it, and Shiki decides to take that as a yes. He says that when Nato talked about controlling his blood, he didn't understand but when he saw him slice his thumb and use the blood to create a weapon, he got an idea. He thought that since they were both Oni, he could just ape his and surprisingly, that worked. He didn't understand the fine details though, and he just let his arm bleed while yelling at it mentally to form a weapon. Shiki is still hyped that his gambit worked, and asks Nato what he thinks about that. Nato thinks that it is utter bullshit because that is not how things work. From his experience, dumb and emotional teens like Shiki have a hard time controlling their blood, while rational and calm people like him have the best chance at using their power properly. He thinks that Shiki doesn't listen to reason or even let his berserker mode control him, and he can use his raw instinct to brute force his power into obeying him. He thinks that it is a very rough method, but it can also give someone an explosive amount of power. He begins to wonder what to do with this unique case, when suddenly, Shiki tells him that he needs power to avenge his dad and kill the man who murdered him. He tells Nato that if he takes him in as an underling and teaches him everything, he will become useful to him. However, Nato refuses to consider that possibility. He turns his umbrella into a spear, telling him that people like him are a risk to society, because he didn't even know that he could control his power and just took a gamble. He says that he can't accept him as a lackey, and then acts like he is going to stab him with the spear, but only hits the floor near his head. He tells Shiki that he won't accept him as an underling, but as a student, and that is really confusing for Shiki because he thinks both are the same thing. Nato tells him that he passed the test barely, but he will give him the chance to prove his abilities. Shiki can't make sense of what is going on, so Nato decides to start from the basics. He tells him that they are on an island called Hell's Doorstep, which was known as Onigashima in the past. It was the place where the original Momotaro massacred demons, but now it is a place where the Oni can live safely. At the center of the island, there is the Rosetsu Academy, which is a military school that trains Oni to fight against the Momotaro agency. Shiki gets freaked out on learning that he is on an island, but Nato pokes his face, telling him that it is not important. The most important part is that the Rosetsu Academy will teach him everything from general education, controlling his Oni blood, fighting techniques, and the history between Momotaro and Oni. Nato is Shiki's homeroom teacher, and he tells him more about how they do things here at the academy, but that is more than his pea-sized brain can handle. Shiki doesn't even care about that because all he wants to know is if he can become strong enough to avenge his dad. Nato can't give him any guarantee, but he tells him that if he can't become strong enough to fight the Momotaro agency, he will be expelled from school. Soon, Shiki gets dressed up and he is excited to go to a different kind of school, but Nato warns him that other people have passed the test this year, and he is probably the least skillful amongst them. Suddenly, Shiki remembers his dad and asks Nato where his body is. Nato replies that they have kept him in the morgue because they wanted Shiki to handle the funeral as per his beliefs. Shiki gets a bit gloomy on thinking about his dad's death, and Nato tells him that being a gloomy idiot is a waste of time, and he should focus only on becoming stronger so that he can get his revenge. Shiki says that he seems like a nice guy after all, and that embarrasses Nato, who speeds away, telling Shiki that if he doesn't reach the class before him, he will be expelled. Shiki somehow catches up to him, and as he wonders how should he enter the class to farm the maximum amount of aura, Nato just kicks him through the door. Shiki feels like he got some aura debt because of his uncool entry, and he asks the masked boy named Jin for some tissues for his nosebleed. Jin turns out to be an even bigger edgelord than their teacher, and he tells Shiki to stop talking to him. Shiki gets mad at that and starts teasing him for not having his horns yet. Jin simply manifests his horns, saying that only dumb rookies who can't control the horns flaunt them all the time. This comment offends another guy named Ikari, who also can't control his horns. Things start getting tense in the classroom with Shiki getting up close and personal with Jin. However, before things can get violent, Nato suddenly arrives behind them and Shiki finds himself sitting right next to Jin without even realizing when it happened. Jin is equally shocked, but Nato doesn't have time to waste with what his students think. He says that for their first lesson, they are going to play a game of tag. He takes all the students to the forest, telling them that they have 1 hour to get back to the school while avoiding being caught by him. Nato then declares that anyone who doesn't make it back to school in the time limit will be expelled, and he doesn't care about Shiki's objection. He then tells the students that they are free to use their powers, and he will only use his in case someone goes berserk. Jin confidently says that he might get killed if he doesn't use his powers, and Nato has no issue with that. Instead, he says that if someone kills him, they will graduate instantly, and then they can join any squad that they wish to fight the Momotaro agency. He then says that the school is there to prepare them for real-life challenges, and he is going to test them at each step. He asks everyone if they are ready, and Shiki replies that he is going to give it his all and ace the tests. Nato then reveals that there is another rule, and takes out 2 balls that are still smaller than mine. He tells the students that they need to have a ball with them when they reach the academy to pass this test, and then suddenly throws them into the restricted area. The students think that since there are only 2 balls, they will have to fight for them, but then Nato reveals that they will be divided into teams. The first team has Shiki along with Jin and the timid pink-haired bitch, Homer. The second group has the delinquent named Ikari and the nerd Juji, while the third group has the nervous Roku and Kuina, who seems the most confident out of everyone present there. Nato tells the 3 teams that he will enter the restricted zone 15 minutes after them so that they can get a head start, but Shiki interrupts him, saying that he doesn't want to team up with the masked weirdo. Nato tells him that he will be expelled if he can't work in a team, and he is forced to take his words back. After that, Homer politely introduces herself to Shiki, who has never had any sort of female interaction in his entire life. He immediately gets butterflies in his stomach as he sees Homer approach him, and he confidently tells her that he will protect her. She gets flustered on hearing this and tells him that he doesn't need to go that far, because all she wants is to not get in his way. Next, she goes to introduce herself to Jin, but he is an edgy Tate fan who doesn't even bother to respond to her. Homer's low self-esteem kicks in, and she starts crying and apologizing for talking to him. Shiki starts yelling at Jin for hurting the girl's feelings, and then he quickly moves on to comfort Homer, telling her that she should not ruin her cute looks by crying. He then returns to taunt Jin, but the Tate fan tells him to stop being a beta simp. Nato interrupts their quarrel and tells them to head inside because they don't have all day. Jin and Shiki immediately run towards the restricted forest, and after a while of staring around cluelessly, Homer also follows them. Inside, Jin starts jumping through the trees like a ninja from Naruto, thinking about how killing Nato will earn him his graduation and the right to join whichever squad he wants. He wants to take this chance to get on the front lines and face his greatest enemy again. But then suddenly, Shiki tries attacking him from behind, snapping him out of his internal monologue. Jin asks him what the hell is wrong with him, and Shiki replies that he is going to prove that he is stronger than him. Jin is all in for a fight as well, and he removes his mask to reveal some terrible scars around his mouth. Shiki is creeped out, but he says that only weaklings show off their old scars, but Jin doesn't fall for his taunts. He simply removes his gloves, revealing that his hand is covered in stitch marks too. He tears one of the stitches to let out his blood and turns it into circular saws. Shiki is shocked to see this because he thinks that the author of Chainsaw Man will sue them for copying his ideas. Jin tells him to stop wasting his time and run away if he is scared, but Shiki replies that if he runs away now, he won't be able to avenge his father's death. Jin is taken aback on hearing that, but then he suddenly grows menacing as he tells Shiki that they will never be able to understand each other. Shiki tells him that he doesn't want to understand him in the first place, and bites his thumb to release his blood. However, he fails to turn it into a gun this time and panics, wondering what exactly he should do to make it work. He decides to fight back using a stick because that's the only option he has, but he soon realizes that he is no match for Jin, who can cut trees with just one strike of his chainsaw arms. Meanwhile, Homer is trying to find the two boys when suddenly, she hears the loud thud from trees falling on the ground. She suddenly panics and her inferiority complex kicks in, thinking that she is not fit to be in a place like this. However, she cheers up a bit on thinking that Shiki called her cute, and she decides to look for him, not realizing that she was just a few feet away from one of the balls. At the same time, Shiki is trying to fight against Jin with his bare fists. Jin doesn't even use his chainsaw powers against him, and he is still able to whoop his ass with ease. Shiki keeps wondering how can he control his powers so easily, but then he realizes that Jin's ability is different from his or Nado's. He loses his focus while thinking about the true nature of their abilities, and Jin is able to knock him down with a single punch. Shiki feels frustrated because of this, and Jin decides to let the loser cry in peace. However, just as he starts walking around, Shiki gets back up on his feet, telling him that the fight isn't over. The pissed Jin just sends a chainsaw towards him, and at the exact moment, Homer arrives there. Thanks to her negative survival instincts, she doesn't even notice she is walking right in the line of fire. Shiki panics on seeing this, and luckily, he manages to get her to safety, even though he gets slightly wounded in doing that. He quickly gets up from top of Homer and tells Jin to apologize to her, but Jin replies that it would have been her fault if she died from his weak attack. Shiki is pissed at this, but then suddenly, he hears Homer chanting she is sorry like a prayer. He tells her that it is not her fault, but Homer is in a trance and she suddenly starts bleeding out from her nose. The blood slowly takes the form of a giant human, and both Jin and Shiki freak out, wondering what in the name of Attack on Titan is this. Homer tells them both to run away because her female Titan is going to kill them. Just as she says this, the female Titan hits the ground with her full strength, and Shiki barely avoids getting hit by her attack. Jin, on the other hand, jumps right towards the female Titan to fight back, but his chainsaws can't do much damage to her giant body. Shiki asks Homer if she can't stop that thing, and she apologizes because she can't do anything. She suddenly collapses after losing too much blood, and Shiki decides to get her away from the female Titan to help her. However, he is shocked to see the Titan protecting her, and even Jin wonders if Homer's blood has a will of its own. Suddenly, the female Titan starts spitting blood violently, and while Jin hides behind a rock, Shiki takes the full force of the attack head-on. The crying Homer asks the female Titan to stop, calling her elder sister, and Shiki gets up, confused about what she means. Homer once again asks him to run, but Shiki refuses, saying that she will die of blood loss if he doesn't help her, and he doesn't want to see anyone else die in front of him ever again. Suddenly, the female Titan lets out a powerful roar whose shockwave reaches even the rest of the students outside the forest. Nado watches everything from a treetop, and he decides to let Shiki and Jin try to deal with Homer's blood release ability before he steps in. Back at the location of the battle, Shiki tries injuring himself to draw blood and use it as a weapon, but that doesn't happen. The female Titan attacks him and he dodges, but then the female Titan scoops up some rocks from the ground and hurls them at him. He takes a hit and gets flung away, but the thing that hurts him most is how pathetically weak he is right now. He has never lost a fight before, but now he is just a useless brat. He starts crying because of frustration, but then Jin comes out to join the fight and tells him to go home if he is going to cry like a Shiki gets mad at him and tells him that he was just sweating from his eyes, but Jin doesn't have time for that. He slices open his wounds again, and this time, he creates 2 different types of chainsaws on either arm. The damage he took from the female Titan's previous attack is still bothering him, but he is determined to win every fight in front of him. Nado just watches from afar, and he is impressed that Jin can create 2 types of weapons at the same time. He begins explaining how Oni blood can take any form they imagine, but it is often influenced by their past trauma, preferences, and experiences. Meanwhile, Jin rushes towards the female Titan, using the circular chainsaw to climb up. He then tries to ape Levi Ackerman by attacking the female Titan's neck, but she sacrifices an arm to protect herself. While he fights the female Titan, Shiki screams at his hand to make something. He wonders why he can't make a weapon when Jin can, but then suddenly, he realizes that Jin only makes things for cutting, and even Homer has a personal connection with her female titan. He thinks that he can make guns because he likes them more than an average American, and he suddenly figures out how to control his powers. On the other side, Jin is having a hard time fighting the female titan, who suddenly lets out a loud roar that bursts his eardrums. He loses his sense of balance and thinks that he is going to die, and even Nato gets ready to step in, but then Shiki declares that he will take the fight up now. He points a powerful grenade launcher at the female titan, and Nato is impressed that he figured it out. Shiki is thrilled to try out his new weapon, but then the female titan attacks him. He dodges her attack and then fires a grenade at her, blowing her apart instantly, and both Jin and Nato are stunned to see his power. The female titan starts vanishing as her fragments are scattered everywhere, and Homer loses consciousness. Meanwhile, Jin is still astonished by Shiki's firepower when it suddenly starts raining blood. However, it was just the blood scattered in the air from Shiki's previous attack, and it soon turns into normal rain. Jin realizes that Shiki's attack didn't just kill the female titan, but it also changed the weather. Shiki, on the other hand, doesn't even think about that. He starts heading towards Homer to see if she is fine, but then his vision gets blurry and he falls to the ground, unable to move. Just then, Nato comes there, telling him that he unleashed a ridiculous amount of blood just now, and that is why his body doesn't have any strength left. Shiki tells him that he can still go on and somehow forces himself to stand up, but that doesn't last even for 5 seconds, and he once again falls to the ground. Nato calls him a noob who can't even control his power, but he realizes that Shiki's power was beyond anything he has ever seen. He tells Shiki that if he uses up too much blood, he could even die, and that makes him worry about Homer instead of him. He asks Nato to check up on her because she might have used a lot of blood, and he is fine being checked after her. Nato was not expecting Shiki to worry about another person when he himself is in such a serious condition, but just as he is about to help them, Jin launches a surprise attack on him. Thankfully, Nato's reflexes are fast enough to block the attack, and he pushes Jin back, who tells him that they don't need to worry about the losers. Nato asks him what happens if Homer dies because she can't get emergency treatment, and Jin replies that it doesn't concern him. Nato is disgusted on hearing that, and he makes it clear to Jin that he hates selfish bastards like him. Jin doesn't care about that either, and he just asks Nato to confirm that he can graduate if he kills him. Nato promises that he is speaking the truth, and that is enough for Jin to dash straight at him. Nato blocks his blood chainsaw using his umbrella that is made from the same material as the Hulk's pants because that thing is indestructible. He then presses a button to release a smoke screen, and Jin thinks that he is trying to take him down with a surprise attack. He is confident that he can kill Nato the moment he steps into his range, but the next moment, he gets hit by some swift bullets. He immediately takes cover behind a tree, and Nato keeps firing rubber bullets from his multi-purpose umbrella towards him, saying that the bullets won't kill him, but they will hurt like hell. He also purposefully targeted Jai's injured hand earlier for maximum damage. Jin realizes that Nato plans to keep a safe distance between them because he thinks that he can only use close-ranged weapons. However, he has a few secret tricks for times like these, and he immediately leaves the tree's cover, dodging Nato's bullets before sending some flying blades towards him. Nato dodges them easily, but he is surprised that Jin has a counter for enemies that can fight outside his range. Jin keeps attacking him, and then appears behind him mid-air, thinking that he won't be able to defend now. However, Nato just throws a bomb at him, and Jin panics. Luckily, it turns out to be another harmless smoke bomb, and Jin thinks that Nato is going to shoot him from a distance again. That is why he doesn't even anticipate Nato coming in from behind and hitting him with a spine-crushing punch. Nato lectures him about being too sure about his predictions in a battle because that makes him vulnerable to surprise attacks. Jin is too injured and exhausted to even move now, but he keeps trying, and Nato has to invert his umbrella and use it as a cage to contain him. Jin keeps trying to break free from the umbrella, and Nato asks him if he is so desperate to see his dad. He suddenly goes silent on hearing this, and then asks Nato how did he know about that. Nato replies that he looked into his files, so he knows a few things about him, including the fact that his dad is a Momotaro. While every cell of Jin's body revolts on hearing this, Shiki is shocked to learn that both of them have similar backstories. However, Jin is filled with hatred as he admits that his father is a Momotaro, and that bastard took everything away from him. He killed his family and then did experiments on him, leaving scars all over his body. Jin remembers how he survived on garbage and the hatred against his father. He swears that he will kill him with his own hands, even if he has to risk his life for that. In his enraged mode, Jin suddenly gets a burst of power, allowing him to uproot the cage holding him down. However, before he can do anything, Nato grabs him by his face and then slams him into the ground, calling him a stupid brat. He tells him that if he dies while chasing his dream, he is an idiot who will never be able to achieve them. He tells him to live for the sake of making his dream come true, even if it means accepting defeat and humiliation. Jin finally stops moving with that, and then Nato calls the school to send the nurse because he has an injured student here. He informs the school that Homer has been retired from this test because of her blood loss, and Jin has also been tied up. Shiki, on the other hand, is still standing, and Nato tells him that he has barely 6 minutes before the time limit runs out. He has one of the balls in his hand and tells Shiki that he can either try to take it from him or find the remaining ball within 5 minutes and reach the school. Shiki says that it is not fair, but he has no choice except playing by NATO's rules. He immediately runs away and Shiki decides to chase after him to see what he does. Meanwhile, Jin is sitting silently where he is tied to a tree when suddenly, Shiki pops out of the bushes nearby. He walks over to Jin, telling him that he will free him, but in exchange, he will have to work together with him. Jin is shocked by this offer and Shiki says that neither of them can beat NATO on their own, but if they work together, they have a chance. Jin refuses, saying that being rescued by an idiot will lower his pride and Shiki doesn't even bother to debate the point that he is an idiot. He asks Jin if his pride is more important to him than his goals, because he cannot achieve his goals just by sitting here. Jin asks him why does he even care about that and Shiki reveals that his dad was a Momotaro too. Jin is shocked to hear this, and then Shiki pulls the good old Naruto on him, telling him that they are the same. Meanwhile, NATO is looking for Shiki, and since he can't find him, he doubts that he returned. Just then, he sees Shiki running away while cursing Jin, and decides to corner him immediately. Shiki stops as soon as NATO jumps in, telling him that he is running out of time while flexing his ball. Shiki starts cursing Jin in his mind, not because he is not helping him, but because despite being rescued, he wanted to be the one in charge. Just then, Jin jumps at NATO from above, aiming for the ball, but he easily dodges him. However, that was just a feint, and Jin's real move is to throw a stone tied to a rope at NATO. The rope loops around him, quickly restraining him, and then Shiki catches the other end. He and Jin start pulling NATO with all their might, but he digs his heels into the ground, pretty sure that they don't have enough stamina to win against him. Suddenly, Jin shoots a blood blade at NATO, forcing him to dodge, and he loses his balance in an attempt to do that. That is enough for Shiki, who rushes towards him and hits the ball out of his hands. The ball lands near Jin and NATO is pretty sure that if he tries to take it to the school, Shiki will try to steal it from him. He plans to take it from them while they fight, but to his surprise, Shiki tells Jin to take the ball and run. Jin does exactly that and Shiki keeps cheering on him excitedly. He tells NATO that they got the ball from him, but then NATO reminds him that only the person who takes the ball to the school passes, and at this rate, that will be just Jin. Shiki is stunned on realizing that, and NATO realizes that he is a complete moron who doesn't think about the benefits and losses before taking any action. He does indeed regret his decisions quickly and yells at Jin to come back, but he is too far away to listen to him now. Jin is sure that he can make it back to the school in time at this rate, but then he remembers how this would not be possible without Shiki's help, and suddenly, he can't just abandon him. He turns around and runs towards Shiki, who is dumbfounded and asks him if he is as directionally challenged as Zoro. Jin tells him to shut up because the only reason he is doing this is because he doesn't want to owe his success to an idiot. He would rather fail and achieve his goal on his own, and that is why he asks Shiki to take the ball and head to the academy. However, just as they are about to make contact, a small pink creature comes running there at great speed and stops right in between them. NATO immediately pauses the test, telling them that they shouldn't fight when Muku, their high-speed courier delivery pet, is here with them. He knows that Muku is dispatched only when there is an emergency, and he activates the radio on its back to receive a request for backup from the Kyoto branch that is under attack by the Momotaro agency. Outside the test zone, the rest of the students are patiently waiting for their turn, thinking that Shiki and others failed because it is already past the time limit. However, NATO returns along with Shiki and Jin just then, telling the other students that the Kyoto branch is in serious danger, and it is requesting backup, so they are heading there instead of conducting the test. They immediately get on a boat and head towards the Kyoto branch, and the students have mixed opinions about being on actual battlefields so quick. However, NATO tells them that they won't be fighting, and he only needs them to support the actual fighters. Soon, they reach Kyoto and NATO leads them to the area around a famous temple, saying that the Oni agency base is located right underneath it. He takes the students to an ordinary-looking restaurant, where a creepy old woman welcomes them. Once they reach the living room, the old woman reveals a secret underground staircase that will lead them to their destination. Meanwhile, at another location, Tsubakiri, a captain of the Momotaro agency, has just finished hunting down a unit of Oni. He calls them a bunch of maggots pretending to be soldiers, and his vice, Captain Yomogi, tells him that he went overboard again. She complains about all the mess he made because it is going to be a pain to clear it, and Tsubakiri replies that he just gets too annoyed when he sees maggots. He wishes that they got to face a female Oni instead because they are resilient and can tolerate more pain than males, which makes them a good choice for his experiments. Yomogi tells him that his experiments are disgusting, and she hates them, especially the thing that is walking towards them. Tsubakiri tells her not to be cold to his favorite creation, which is a blend of a dog, a monkey, and a pheasant. He has named it Ugly, and that is the only thing Yomogi can agree with him on. Tsubakiri says that Ugly is his important research specimen as well as a loyal member of their anti-Oni biological weapons. Mommy Yomogi says that their job is to kill dangerous Oni and save civilians, and he should contribute more to that rather than wasting his time on creepy research. Tsubakiri tells her that Oni blood is a truly fascinating thing, and he is doing his best to help in his own way. He claims that if they can learn how to control Oni blood on their own, it will surely help the Momotaro agency tremendously, and even better, if they can turn the healing factor of the Oni blood into a medicine, they could become richer than Elan, Jeff, and Zuck combined. Yomogi reminds him that even the Momotaros have similar abilities, and Tsubakiri says that it isn't wise to experiment on people. However, the Oni are maggots in his eyes, and he says that they should experiment on them because simply killing them is a waste. A terrified Oni kid hears all of this while hiding behind the corner, and he tries his best to remain quiet. As soon as he hears the footsteps of the two Momotaro agents head away from him, he takes a sigh of relief, and that turns out to be his fatal mistake because Tsubakiri hears him and immediately comes over to his location. The child freaks out and Tsubakiri decides to take him to the lab. Yomogi tells him that she will knock him out so that he doesn't create problems, but as she is trying to put him to sleep without anesthesia, a drop of blood spills on Tsubakiri's coat. Yomogi realizes that this means trouble, not for her but for the Oni kid. Tsubakiri walks up to him and starts kicking him, saying that even though he is fascinated by Oni blood, it is a filthy thing, and he won't tolerate it on his uniform. He then asks the kid if his parents live nearby, and were they part of the group he just killed. On getting no answer, he lifts up the corpses of the Oni nearby to show them to the kid, asking if his parents are here. The kid is too terrified to even speak, and Tsubakiri decides to crush him with the corpses. Yomogi is creeped out by this because out of all the Momotaro abilities she has seen, Tsubakiri's is the most diabolical. The black mist that comes out of their bodies is actually a special bacteria that lives in their blood, and they can use it to create weapons. Tsubakiri, however, can use the bacteria to control corpses, and she still can't get used to it. Soon, Tsubakiri finishes killing the boy, and he tells Ugly to eat the giant Oni dumpling while they go ahead and find more maggots to kill. On the other hand, Shin and other students are walking through a wide tunnel, and Nato tells them that some shops in this area have access to this tunnel that leads to their base. They soon reach the gate that leads them to the space right below the Uryuta temple, which is fashioned like a traditional Japanese house. The students can't believe their eyes as Nato tells them that this is the headquarters of the Kyoto division of the Oni agency. Just then, a doctor comes out of a room, complaining about all the work he has to do, but his attitude suddenly changes when he sees Nato. The doctor greets him cheerfully, and then starts fixing his hair as he notices the blonde baddie. She turns him down immediately, but that doesn't let the simp's heart get broken because he is actually used to rejections. Shin asks who this clown is, and Nato introduces him as Kyoya, the commander of the support unit at the Kyoto base. Kyoya adds that he and Nato were classmates back in the academy, but Nato doesn't have time for his idle chatter. He decides to head to the front lines immediately, and Shin asks him to take him along as well. Other students also want to go with him rather than dealing with a weirdo like Kyoya, but Nato isn't going to listen to them. He tells Kyoya to use these brats as he pleases before he leaves, and just then, the nurse tells Kyoya to get back in and do his work. She notices the students from the academy as well, and tells them to get changed immediately because they need all the help they can get. They get dressed as assistant nurses quickly, and then go to the makeshift hospital, where dozens of injured Oni are crying out in pain. One of them has been brought in just now, and he has lost both his legs along with some other life-threatening injuries. Shiki is horrified to see his condition, and the nurse also says that he has at most 3 minutes left to live at this rate. Kyoya just smiles at him and says that they won't let him die, and Shiki snaps at him, asking him not to make such careless and fake promises. Kyoya appreciates his honesty and kindness, but tells him that he is kind of a big deal here, and he decides to show the kids how real support work is done. In another location, Tsubakiri and Yomogi have just finished dealing with the captain and vice captain of another group. The remaining Oni are terrified of them now, and Tsubakiri is disappointed that he will have to deal with another bunch of nobodies when he was expecting someone strong. Well, his wishes are granted immediately as Nato comes there and quickly activates his ability. Tsubakiri is pleased to see him, but Nato doesn't give him a chance to be happy for too long as he immediately unleashes his killer move on him. The Oni are really glad to see that Nato has come to save them, but Tsubakiri didn't take any damage from the previous attack as he used the dead Oni captain and vice captain as his meat shields. Turns out, he knows Nato already, and he talks to him like they are old friends. He asks what is he doing in Kyoto because this is not his area. Tsubakiri then remarks that he has heard of a location where the Oni in Kyoto are gathering, and if he just wipes out that place, the entire problem will be solved. Nato keeps up his poker face as he says that he doesn't know anything about it, and Tsubakiri replies that he will give up if even Nato claims that the place is not real. He then says that he will go for sightseeing around the big temple instead, and Nato panics inside because he knows that Tsubakiri has really sharp instincts. He decides to stop him right here, and gets ready to fight seriously. Back in the headquarters, Kyoya inserts multiple blood pipes into his body, and Shiki asks if they shouldn't be giving that blood to the injured instead. The nurse tells him to shut up and watch as Kyoya heads over to the most severely injured man. He asks him if he wants his hands or feet to regrow because he can't afford both right now. The man summons every bit of his strength to say that he wants his arms so that he can hug his children again. Kyoya promises that he will be able to do that, but this process is going to hurt like hell. He then slices his wrist open to pour his blood into the injured man's mouth, claiming that it boosts the healing ability of a normal Oni by many times. As soon as his blood starts showing effect, the man starts screaming in pain, and the nurse tells the students to hold him down. Shiki and others immediately follow her orders, and in the meantime, she tells the others to get more blood from the next room. Soon after that, something starts poking through the man's bandaged arms, and Shiki creeps out as he sees something that vaguely resembles human fingers. Other students get back too, and then suddenly, the injured man regenerates his arms, and even the severe burn wounds on his chest heal completely. Shiki immediately heads over to Kyoya, asking if they can regenerate his legs too, and he affirms but adds that they need to do it over time and using small doses of his blood. Since he has already consumed too much blood, the injured guy may develop antibodies if he drinks any more of it. Kyoya then heads over to the patient, telling him that he will be retired from the combat unit now, but he can join the support unit to help others out. He says that with a pair of prosthetics, he will be playing with his kids in no time, and the man is moved to tears on hearing that. Kyoya then turns to the students, telling them that they could be in the place of this guy in the future. He understands the glory chasing and aura farming that can only be done on the front lines, but he reminds them that people on the front lines can fight bravely only because there is someone to cover their back, and that is the support unit. Shiki and a few others are really impressed by him now, and they tell him that they are ready to help him in any way they can. Kyoya tells Shiki that he needs his help with another matter, and takes him to a depressed girl named Mei who was brought in yesterday after the Momotaro agency attacked her. Her parents are still missing, and Kyoya wants to use Shiki's kindness to make the girl feel better. Shiki takes up the job and tries talking to the girl, who gradually opens up to him. He asks her about school, and she tells him that she never went to school. As Shiki is wondering if the girl is a troublemaker like him, the support unit brings in some dead bodies from the battlefield, and Mei's parents are among them. She starts bawling like crazy as she sees them, and Kyoya says that he can't get used to such painful scenes even after all this time. However, there is a deeper and more sinister plan behind the corpses than anyone realizes. Tsubakiri tells Nato that he laced some Oni corpses with his bacteria, fully aware that the support unit will take them to their base to give them a proper funeral, and then he can control the corpses from a distance and destroy the base. Nato is shocked to hear this, and Tsubakiri decides to try if his plan succeeded. He awakens the corpse of Mei's dad while Shiki and Kyoya are distracted, and she is overjoyed, thinking that he is still alive. However, he starts strangling her under Tsubakiri's command, but Shiki and Kyoya are quick to notice it. Kyoya realizes that this is Tsubakiri's ability, and he immediately tells Shiki to cover Mei's eyes. He obeys the order, and then Kyoya pierces the man's brain with 2 sharp knives, rendering him immobile. Mei starts crying once Shiki lets her see what happened to her dad, and then Kyoya realizes that there might be more puppet zombies here just like this one. However, he realizes it too late because the zombie puppets have started moving, and Mei's mom suddenly gets up and attacks Shiki before he even realizes it. She starts strangling him, and Kyoya decides to neutralize her quickly. But before he can get the scalpels out, more zombies attack from behind, restraining him. Shiki can't do anything either, and his brain's oxygen supply slowly gets cut off, causing him to pass out. The same thing happens all over the headquarters, and the zombies start attacking the supporters carrying them first. The supporters are not even trained to fight, and because of the suddenness of the attack, they are easy targets for the zombies to subdue. At the same time, the zombies break into the room where all the serious patients are receiving treatment. They attack the patients and the nursing staff, and no one has any idea about how to solve the problem. Back in the other room, Shiki is somehow holding on to his consciousness as Mei cries and begs her mom to leave him. Shiki tells the girl to get away from the zombie because it is not her mother, but Mei doesn't even listen to him. Kyoya tries to help him, but the zombies knock him down. Seeing that no one is coming to help him, Shiki pulls out a Glock from his ass. Turns out that Nato had given him the gun on the boat, telling him that he was not skilled enough to control his blood yet, so if there is a need to fight, he should use a weapon he is familiar with. He also told him that the gun had Shiki's blood bullets instead of normal ammo, and that it would hit much harder. If there is a time to use the gun, it is now, and Shiki first pulls Mei close so that she doesn't have to see the bloodshed that comes next. He then points it at the zombie woman's head and pulls the trigger, putting an end to her. Shiki then catches his breath, while Kyoya is still bottoming for 3 zombies at once. Thankfully, Shiki recovers quickly and shoots a hole in each zombie's head, before helping Kyoya get up. Kyoya complains that the support unit is not ready for such situations, and he puts Shiki in charge of cleaning this mess while he evacuates the patients. In the main hall, the rest of the students are fighting with the zombies using just their fists because they are not sure about the situation yet. They wonder how to put the zombies down for good because they get back up no matter how severely they are injured. And just then, Shiki and Kyoya arrive there. Shiki tells everyone to aim for the brains, because that is the only way to stop the zombies. He immediately starts hitting headshots in all directions, and Jin is the first to follow his lead. Jin slices open his stitches and does some surgery on the zombies in front of him, and the others also gradually realize what they need to do. Using this chance, Kyoya commands the support staff to evacuate the patients and treat anyone who is freshly injured. Meanwhile, Shiki keeps firing at the zombies like his gun has infinite ammo, but he thinks that killing people who are already dead is the grossest thing he has done in his entire life. He starts getting first-hand trauma as he thinks that every zombie he kills was once a person who had family and friends who cared about them. He feels like he will cry at any moment now, and he wonders why they are hurting their own people when their enemy is the Momotaro Agency. On the other hand, Nato is still in a standoff with Tsubakiri. He decides to take him out in close combat, but Tsubakiri uses 3 dead Oni as his shield. Nato is pissed, but then he notices the monster Ugly next to him, ready to deliver a devastating blow. He somehow dodges the attack at the last moment, but Ugly smashes through the 3 Oni. Nato is not happy with this, and Tsubakiri tells him that he should be happy that the pests infecting this world are dead. Nato tells him that no matter how strong he is, he cannot win every battle as a loner, but Tsubakiri finds that ironic coming from another loner. His point is proven within seconds as the fodder Oni offer to support him, but he tells them to evacuate to safety because they will only hold him back. Tsubakiri tells him that no one is leaving this place, and he commands his assistant Momogi to do her job. Mommy Momogi steps up and uses her power, creating an impenetrable barrier around Nato and the other Oni that traps them in their place. Tsubakiri tells Nato that he can't leave this barrier until Momogi permits, and in the meantime, he will take a stroll around the Oni headquarters. Nato panics as Tsubakiri reveals that he planted transmitters on the all Oni corpses, and they all have gathered right under the Uryuta temple, so that must be the Oni headquarters. Tsubakiri starts walking towards the temple, and he commands Momogi to send Ugly inside the barrier. She gives the creature the permission to enter her barrier, and Nato gets ready to fight it. However, Tsubakiri says that this creature is mass-produced, so it is perfectly fine even if they sacrifice. He snaps his fingers and Ugly's belly suddenly starts swelling up. Nato realizes that it is going to self-destruct and tells everyone to get down, but there is not enough space in the tiny room for them to avoid the explosion that is powerful enough to shatter Momogi's barrier and destroy nearby buildings. Momogi asks if they should double-check to make sure that Nato is dead, but Tsubakiri tells her that there is too much smoke there and he doesn't want his uniform to get dirty. That turns out to be a mistake because despite being unconscious, Nato doesn't seem to have any major visible injuries. Back in the headquarters, Shiki and others have finally managed to defeat all the zombies, and Kyoya has also transported the patients to a safer location. He thinks their problems are solved with this, but then he notices Mei, who is staring blankly at her parents' corpses. He goes to console her and Shiki joins him. He apologizes to Mei for shooting her mom, but she coldly replies that it is all right. Shiki is shocked by her response, but Mei continues, saying that she was always running from one place to the other, hiding from some threat that she didn't even know about. She had no friends, and she didn't even go to school, and she had an idea that something like this would happen one day. She puts on a fake smile as she tells Shiki not to worry about her, and his heart shatters on hearing this. He remembers his own childhood and how he always admired superheroes. In their folk stories, Momotaro is supposed to be the hero while the Oni are villains. He asks if this is how the heroes of the fairy tales work. He suddenly hugs Mei, declaring that he will become a villain and crush all the heroes. He promises Mei that he will create a world where she can smile again, and she doesn't know how to respond to that. Soon after that, Kyoya takes Jin with him for support as he explains his plans to cremate the bodies of the dead Oni, but Jin is not interested in his yapping. On the other hand, the rest of the students are dragging the bodies to carry them to the funeral house, but the stuck-up nerd named Juji seems to have other things in mind. Hikari tells him to stop slacking around and help him, and Juji says that he has a theory. Since they were attacked here, he believes that the headquarters are not as safe as they thought, and they can be attacked again. Juji's ability is more suited for scouting, so he decides to keep watch. He immediately cuts open his thumb and lets his blood fall on the ground, creating a radar that can sense any living being within a 5-kilometer radius, and he can even confirm if they are Momotaro. Hikari is seriously impressed by his ability, when suddenly, Juji spots some hostile people approaching their base. Those signals come from Tsubakiri and Momogi, who have reached the shop that served as the secret passage to the Oni headquarters. The old woman there is already dead, and Momogi has found the entrance to the tunnel as well. While she inspects it, Tsubakiri calls the Momotaro agency, asking them to send several mass-produced uglies to his location, as well as a special purpose ugly that he made himself. He also asks for information on a certain high-risk Oni whose name he forgot, and then gets ready to go inside. Momogi tells him that the area seems to be really huge, and there might be a lot of Oni there, so they need to be careful. She suggests tossing in some poison gas to make their work easy, but just then Tsubakiri gets the file of the high-risk Oni that is none other than Shiki. He tells Momogi that they can't use poison now, because he wants Shiki alive. She is surprised to hear this, and Tsubakiri says that Shiki is really special for an Oni, and he cannot miss the chance to experiment on him. On the other hand, Kyoya shows Jin the crematorium where they burn all their dead friends. Jin is a bit taken aback to see it, and Kyoya says that once a war with the Momotaro agency begins, a lot of people end up dead. He warns Jin about the dangers of the line he is stepping out into, but tells him that he doesn't have to worry too much because he can heal from almost anything. After that, he suddenly gets too friendly with Jin and asks if he has a girlfriend. Jin completely ignores the weirdo and walks away, and as Kyoya chases after him, he suddenly senses someone approaching him from behind. He turns around at the same moment he is stabbed by Tsubakiri, who was actually aiming for his back but missed. Kyoya is too surprised to react, but Jin instinctively releases his blood chainsaws to fight against the enemy. However, before he can do anything, Momogi appears behind him, locking his chainsaws in her black prison and then cracking up his arm. Jin cries in pain, but the black prison around his arms don't hold on for much longer. He tries to focus on the enemies despite the pain, realizing that they are in the worst possible scenario right now. Both he and Kyoya are injured, and he doesn't know anything about the enemies. However, Kyoya is quite calm even in this situation, and he tells Jin to rush back and tell everyone about the enemy attack while he stalls the two Momoteros. Jin follows his orders, promising to bring back up, and then Kyoya turns his attention to the two enemies in front of him. Tsubakiri tells Momogi to do her thing, and she creates a gigantic barrier around the entire headquarters. At this point, Kyoya realizes that her ability is to create barriers with her bacteria, and she plans to make sure no one can get out of the headquarters alive. Kyoya begins to calculate his options because he can't fight, and he doesn't think that the students are strong enough to beat the dangerous opponents in front of him. He believes that reinforcements aren't coming anytime soon, and that simply means that he is going to die. Suddenly, Tsubakiri asks him if he knows Shiki, and Kyoya realizes that things are more complicated than he thinks. He decides to fight back to the best of his abilities and pulls out a poison syringe from his coat. However, before he can get the chance to use it, Tsubakiri slashes his neck and leaves a deep gushing wound. Kyoya panics because he couldn't even see him coming, and he falls to the ground as his blood splatters everywhere with high pressure. As Kyoya gradually loses his consciousness, he wishes that if he is going to die, it should be Mommy Momogi who finishes him off. Tsubakiri is not going to grant his wish though, and he thinks that Kyoya is already dead from his single attack. He decides to control his corpse through his bacteria, but suddenly stops as he senses the ugly creatures outside the barrier. He tells Momogi to let them inside, and she grants access to the uglies. Tsubakiri asks them if they have brought what he asked for, and one of them vomits a big box. He then orders the uglies to remove the cover, revealing a decorated wooden block. Tsubakiri asks the uglies to carry the box carefully as they search for Shiki, and at the same time, Jin reaches the headquarters to warn everyone. He is surprised when he doesn't find anyone nearby, but as he enters the main hall, he finds everyone ready to fight. They are relieved when they see Jin, but he is confused about why all of them are gathered in the same place. Shiki tells him that Juji used his ability and found that enemies were approaching them, so they took action quickly and evacuated all the patients. However, before the rest of them could escape, a black wall blocked off the exit, and now they are stuck here. Some people suggest that they should look for another exit, but the nurse says that she has checked everything, and there is no way out. Shiki then asks Jin about Kyoya, but before he can answer his question, an ugly comes there. Everyone is taken aback on seeing such a creepy monster, and they let it walk through them towards a random guy who becomes monster feed while everyone watches. Everyone decides to run away to avoid facing the monster, and Shiki decides to keep Mei safe with him. Soon after that, Tsubakiri and others enter the hall and find it empty. He orders the uglies to put down the coffin and sits on it, ordering Momogi to capture Shiki alive and kill everyone else. She asks him if he is not going to come with her, and Tsubakiri refuses, saying that he has some important thoughts to think. On the other hand, the blonde baddie Kuina is looking through some clothes in a restroom to find something she can move better in. Meanwhile, the dramatic emo Rokuro is also in the same room, crying that he is going to die because his heart rate is abnormal. Kuina tells him to work on his fitness if he collapses just after running a little. She then covers his face so he doesn't see her change, and then ironically she changes into a skimpy gym where Rokuro asks her what is she planning to do now, and Kuina replies that she is going to set up an ambush, obviously. He gets jealous of healthy people on hearing this because he is always afraid of getting sick. Just then, they hear the heavy footsteps of an ugly approaching them, and Rokuro panics, telling Kuina that he can't fight when he is so stressed. He begs her to do something, and that suddenly turns the baddie on because she likes being in total control. She tells Rokuro to hide in the closet because she will handle everything, and he nervously obeys her command. Kuina then stands facing the door, waiting for the enemy to arrive. The ugly breaks through the wall and enters the room, but before fighting, it asks Kuina if she is Shiki. She angrily replies that Shiki is the stupid-looking delinquent, and on hearing this, the monster suddenly starts attacking her. It knocks down the closet Rokuro was hiding in, causing him to faint. Meanwhile, Kuina decides to show the monster who is the boss once the room has been thrashed enough. She bites her thumb and her blood transforms into boxing gloves around her fists. On the other hand, Jin runs back to Kyoya to check up on him, and Akari also prepares to face off against a monster. At the same time, Shiki focuses on hiding to keep Mei safe, and the only place he finds is the garden. Meanwhile, Rokuro comes back to his senses and finds the room completely silent. He begins to think that everything was just a bad dream and decides to come out of the closet. But to his shock, he finds the monster's face right in front of him. He panics as he tries to make sense of the situation that suddenly turns even more bizarre as the monster gets up and heads towards Kuina obediently. She caresses its face before getting it in position and then knocks it down with a powerful punch. She then gets on top of the monster and begins landing F combos on its head, till it passes out. Rokuro gets scared of her at this point, but Kuina has fun demolishing the monster, and then stomping on it while it lies helplessly on the ground. It is because of her ability called I Love that turns the enemies covered in her blood into slaves who lose the will to fight against her. As Rokuro comes out of the closet to ask if she really defeated the monster on her own, Kuina proudly tells him that she told him to leave everything to her. The reason that she told him this is not because she is a dependable woman who wants to take care of everyone, but because she is a sociopath who likes to make everyone so dependent on her that they lose the ability to work completely. And right now, it is Rokuro who has fallen into her trap. He kneels before her, thanking her for saving him, and that suddenly sends Kuina's tendency to spoil him into overdrive. She places a bedsheet on the ground and tucks Rokuro to it, telling him that he doesn't need to worry about anything because she will handle everything. He gets nervous because she is too close to him, and Kuina notices that he is looking pale and weak. So she decides to get some food for him, and Rokuro panics even more, thinking that this is a trap because there is no way a girl will pay so much attention to him. He begins trembling in fear that she might use him as bait when the next monster comes, and Kuina starts fussing even more over him. Just then, another monster comes there and Kuina decides to deal with it before returning to her main job of spoiling Rokuro rotten. She thinks that this monster is a weakling as well and decides to deal with it quickly, but the monster turns out to be much stronger than the previous one. He uses his arm as a whip to attack her and drills a hole through the wall behind her. Rokuro immediately hides in the closet again, and Kuina is pissed at the monster who ruined her fun. She jumps at it, activating her power midway, but the monster casually dodges her punch and then stabs her shoulder with its freaky tentacle arm. Kuina somehow manages to get away from it, but the monster then uses both its arms to tie her, and she realizes that she can't use her powers like this. The monster starts pulling her closer, and when she resists, he simply jerks the rope and makes her hit the roof. The monster begins slamming the muscle mommy all over the room, and she is powerless to do anything. In the end, she gets slammed on the ground, and the monster begins stomping on her head. Rokuro panics on seeing this, but that is all this useless piece of trash is good for. He just watches Kuina being demolished and wishes that someone comes to help her. He doesn't even think that he can help her because he is a weakling and a coward, but that makes him realize that he became a pathetic loser without even realizing it. He remembers the time when he was not a cowardly loser, and it feels like an eternity has passed since then. Rokuro grew up in a small backwater village where a lot of Oni lived among the humans, and a girl named Lulu was his first love. He always tried to riz her by showing how cool and brave he was, even though he was terrified inside. However, with Lulu by his side, he felt he could do anything. Lulu also stayed close to him, and they both spent most of their time together happily. However, underneath that perfect life, things were not all right. Lulu was sick, and since she was an Oni, she could not be taken to a normal doctor. The only Oni doctor of the village helped keep her stable and healthy, but one day, the Momotaro agency raided the village, and they killed the Oni doctor. Without him, Lulu's condition worsened, and Rokuro promised her that he would quickly bring another doctor from a nearby town. He asked to trust in him because he could do anything for her, and Lulu told him that he has always been the coolest guy she knew. She asked him to stay like that forever, and passed away immediately after that. Rokuro was broken and devastated by this, and soon after that, he lost his spark. He had no reason to be brave or confident anymore. His hair turned gray, and he developed insomnia. His mental health fell off, and he became the loser he is today. As Rokuro thinks about his downfall, the monster turns his head into a pointed whip to finish off Kuina. Rokuro decides to let it finish the job because he is not capable of saving someone. However, just then, the final words of Lulu spring into his mind. He remembers that she told him to always be cool, and that suddenly awakens something in him. Just as the monster attacks Kuina to finish her off, Rokuro rushes there, taking her away from danger in a split second. He realizes that if Lulu saw him right now, she would be disappointed in him, and he is not going to let that happen. He looks at the unconscious and injured Kuina and thinks that she fought so hard to protect him, and now it is his turn to return the favor. However, he is incredibly terrified right now and doesn't even know if his heart can handle the fight. But he thinks of Lulu once again and calms himself. He bites his thumb to release his blood that takes the form of Lulu. Now that his girl is in front of him, Rokuro calms down even further and asks her to stay with him, even though he is not as cool as she would like. The blood construct Lulu hugs him from behind, and the blood slowly starts covering his body, removing his anxiety and panic. However, this is not his true ability, and Rokuro is able to activate his ability once he is fully confident. His blood coats his body, and Rokuro suddenly turns into some sort of K-pop idol. The monster attacks him after he transforms, but Rokuro easily dodges his attack, and then does some fancy spins in the air before landing behind it. The room is already filled with flower petals made out of blood, and each one of them is a deadly blade. As the petals hit the monster, its body is shredded into pieces, but the monster still survives the attack. Rokuro, on the other hand, is brimming with confidence because Lulu is with him. He challenges the monster to attack him and gracefully dodges everything. He then jumps to attack the monster, remembering the summer festivals where he used to dance with Lulu. While lost in memories of his girlfriend, Rokuro dodges the attacks from the monster, cutting off its arms and forcing it to use its feet to fight. He dances around the room, filling it with petal blades, and then deals a lethal combo to the monster, chopping it to pieces. On the other hand, Shiki is with Mei, telling her that she can relax now because the ugly monsters are gone. However, she is still too depressed because of her parents' death and thinks that maybe she should have died with them too. Shiki tells her not to even think of that, because her parents sacrificed their lives to save her, and if she dies, everything will be in vain. He tells her to keep living and fight the despair that is trying to swallow her. He says that the first thing she can do is cheer for him as he beats the bastard who took away her family. With that, Shiki gets up and decides to search for the Momotaro to defeat them. However, Mei believes that he can't win, and Shiki tells her that as long as he doesn't give up hope, he will never lose. Meanwhile, Nato comes to his senses after the other Oni wake him up. He learns that he was knocked out for 15 minutes, and the Oni thank him because he took a lot of damage to protect them. Nato doesn't care about that, and decides to return to the headquarters immediately so that he can help his students. Back in the headquarters, Shiki reaches the main hall where Tsubakiri is just chilling. As Shiki introduces himself and asks him if he is the bastard who turned the corpses into zombies, Tsubakiri happily affirms. Shiki asks him how could he insult dead people like that, and Tsubakiri just laughs at him, telling him that Oni are not humans, so they don't get human rights. Shiki gets furious at this and pulls the Glock on him, but Tsubakiri just watches him curiously. On the other hand, Jin rushes to find Kyoya, but he is stopped by Mami Momogi, who tells him that the doctor is already dead. She asks Jin if he would like to get revenge for his fallen friend, and he replies that he doesn't care about Kyoya, but he will gladly kill any Momotaro he comes across. He unleashes his chainsaw blades, and Momogi also activates her power to fight back. Jin dashes towards her and hits her with his full strength, but Momogi protects herself by creating an impenetrable room around her. She leaves the room and dissolves it immediately after blocking the attack and tells Jin that he can't even touch her with his weak attacks. He takes this as a challenge and gets even more determined to kill her. On the other hand, Tsubakiri throws a knife at Shiki to disarm him, telling him to stop playing with toys and use his real power to attack him. Shiki gets pissed at this and decides to blow him away with his full power. He creates the powerful rocket launcher, controlling his power through pure rage and spite, and tells Tsubakiri that he will go all out to destroy him. He thinks about how much Mei suffered because of this bastard, and then about how Nato told him not to use his power because he can't control it. Shiki doesn't want anyone to tell him what he can do and what he can't, and he fires the rocket launcher at Tsubakiri, creating a massive explosion. However, Tsubakiri dodged that attack and Shiki takes this as a chance to taunt him, asking if he was so scared that he had to hide to save his life. Anyway, Shiki's attention goes to the coffin, and he wonders what is inside it. Tsubakiri answers his question by opening the coffin's door, and a man dressed in Momotaro clothes comes out of it. He declares that he will eradicate all Oni, and Shiki figures out that this is another one of Tsubakiri's zombies. Shiki calls him a heartless bastard, asking how could he turn the corpses of his own comrades into puppets, and Tsubakiri sighs in response. He calls Shiki a smooth-brained idiot who can't have any new thoughts of his own. He tells him that people have something called free will, and his zombie partner here actually volunteered to be turned into a puppet once he died. Shiki can't understand why someone would choose to do that when the zombie Momotaro suddenly uses his ability on him. He sends dark shockwaves towards Shiki's heart, and in just a few seconds, Shiki finds that his body has become so heavy that he can't even stand up. As the zombie keeps spamming his skill, Tsubakiri says that when other Momotaro turn into zombies, he can use their abilities. The ability of his current partner is to mix bacteria with oxygen in the air to make it incredibly heavy. Meanwhile, the zombie keeps repeating the same line about exterminating Oni, and Tsubakiri says that he was also surprised when he first heard him talk. He doesn't understand if it is a grudge or determination that can make this walking corpse speak, but he thinks that this is peak Momotaro spirit. He keeps pressing Shiki down with the zombie's power, asking how long can he keep up against a much stronger enemy. On the other hand, the group of Oni with Nato are trying to cut through the black barrier that Momogi has set up all around their headquarters. Their weapons shatter when they hit the wall, and they wonder if they should try other entrances. However, Nato tells them that it will be pointless because the barrier must be everywhere. The cannon fodders ask him if he can destroy the wall, and even though Nato is confident that he can do it, he thinks it is unwise. Currently, there are tourists on the temple above them, and if he destroys the wall with full force, their lives might be in danger. The Oni panic because they don't have authority to evacuate the tourists, and Nato starts thinking of a solution. Just then, the nerd Juji arrives there and tells Nato that he found enemy signals earlier and helped the injured people evacuate to safety. However, some of the support staff and most of the students are still inside. Nato realizes that they need to hurry to rescue everyone, but before that, they need to evacuate the tourists first. Just then, some Oni tell Nato that they found a weirdo outside the entrance, and it is just Homaire, who has finally returned to her senses. She keeps on mumbling how she should not even be present in a beautiful place like this, but Nato is glad to see her. Suddenly, Juji starts acting like a top-grade pervert because he has a thing for girls in school uniform. He tells Homaire that he would like to gift his V-card to her, and she is grossed out by this creep. Even Nato is shocked because he thought that Juji was the most normal guy in this year's batch of freaks. Anyway, he figures out that there is a way to use Homaire's abilities to evacuate the tourists and immediately takes her to the forest surrounding the temple. Nato then calls Juji, who is in the temple, and tells him that he will create a small earthquake and a landslide to get all the tourists to evacuate. Juji is shocked by this, but Nato assures him that it will be a small landslide and no one will get hurt. The Oni soldiers are already spread throughout the temple to assist people in evacuating, and Nato tells Juji to scan the area to confirm that everyone has left after the evacuation. With that, he turns his attention to Homer and asks her to summon the female titan she summoned before, because that is what is going to cause a landslide. She is afraid that she will go berserk, but Nato assures her that he will handle the situation. Despite his assurance, Homer is too scared to use her powers and Nato gives up. He tells Juji that the landslide plan is cancelled and they need to find another way. He then tells Homer that she is expelled because he doesn't need useless dead weights on his team. He begins skating away, but the nervous Homer tells him that she is too afraid to use her power that she can't control. Nato replies that being scared is not a problem, but refusing to change is a big problem. He knows about the incident that Homer caused in the past accidentally, but everyone in his class has a horrible past weighing them down. He tells Homer that she needs to be the one who takes the first step towards change because no one can help her otherwise. She declares that she wants to change and suddenly bites her thumb, letting her blood gush out. The blood takes the form of the giant titan and starts attacking Nato, who dodges the attacks. The heavy hits from the female titan shake up the mountain and Homer begins to panic. She apologizes for not being able to control her power, but Nato tells her it is fine because this is exactly what he wants right now. Because of the titan's attacks, the ground starts shaking and huge chunks of the mountain begin sliding down. This creates panic among the tourists, and the Oni soldiers immediately tell them to evacuate. Once everyone has run away, Juji confirms it using his radar skill, and Nato decides to stop playing around with the female titan and knocks out Homer to stop her rampage. At the same time, Jin is fighting Momogi, who pushes him back with her black boxes. Jin decides to keep his distance from her, but he doesn't notice that she summoned a box behind him, and he gets trapped inside it. He can't get out of the box now, and Momogi decides to give him a slow and painful death. She begins to shrink the box, telling Jin that he will be squished to a paste inside it. He tells her that he will break through with sheer force, but Momogi doesn't think that it is possible. As the box grows even smaller, she says that the brain starts panicking when someone is enclosed in a tight space, and people lose the ability to do anything. She thinks the same will happen to Jin as the box shrinks further, but then suddenly, she hears the sound of a blade hitting the wall. She thinks it is impossible for him to do that in such a closed space, but Jin has more surprises for her. Suddenly, the box cracks, and then it is blown away to pieces as Jin emerges with chainsaws protruding out of his back. He tells Momogi that once upon a time, he slept in the AC duct of an abandoned building. That place was cold, damp, and foul-smelling, and compared to that her box was a Jet 2 holiday. Momogi is pissed at that and decides to finish him with her next attack. But just then, someone throws the severed head of a monster there. It turns out to be the delinquent named Ikari, who is pissed at the Momotaro for thinking that they could kill him with trash like this. Jin tells him to stay back because this is his fight, but Ikari is already determined to take down the Momotaro in front of them. However, as he sees Mommy Momoga's plot, he loses control of himself. He begins lecturing her about wearing decent clothes, but she doesn't really care what men think about her outfit. Ikari then drops his blood on the ground to activate its power, but Momogi decides to trap both the boys in her cage first. Unfortunately for her, Ikari is too fast and agile compared to her attack. He easily moves through her attack and lands a solid kick to her jaw that rattles her. Momogi is shocked because she couldn't predict the attack, but turns out that even Ikari couldn't predict what his power would do. His blood ability gives him a random power depending on how angry he is, and right now, he got a pair of magical red boots that increase his speed and agility. Ikari thinks that he should have been more angry to get a better weapon, but Momogi just thinks that he is a speed-type enemy, and she is not good against those. At the same time, outside the barrier, Nato uses his special attack to destroy the barrier. The entire headquarters starts shaking as a result, and he realizes that the building will soon collapse. However, he believes that the lives of their friends trapped inside are much more valuable than the building, and they need to rescue them quickly. Everyone inside the building also feels the tremors and realizes they need to get out quickly. Meanwhile, Nato and his group reach the place where Momogi is fighting Jin and Ikari. Nato tells Momogi that she is trapped now, and after using her powers on a huge scale all this time, she should be out of stamina. He tells her to surrender because she can't run, but Momogi tells him that she is not planning to run anyway. She throws away her dress, wearing only a thin layer of the black bacteria, as she declares that she will kill everyone here. Meanwhile, Tsubakiri also decides to finish his battle with Shiki, but Shiki rolls away from the range of his gravity attack. He summons his rocket launcher again and attacks them, but the zombie manipulates the gravity to block the rocket from even reaching him. Tsubakiri then shows another skill of his zombie partner, compressing oxygen into a small sphere that becomes incredibly heavy thanks to his powers. He then shoots that gravity ball towards him, dealing terrible internal injuries to him. As Shiki groans in pain, Tsubakiri says that he can't believe that he is the son of Kishin, who was once hailed as the strongest Oni general in history. He is disappointed in Shiki, who doesn't even know if he should believe his story. Meanwhile, Mei also feels the tremors and gets scared as debris starts falling from the roof. However, she remembers how Shiki told her not to give in to despair. He had told her to cheer for him if she felt like she really wanted to live, and she decides to find courage by supporting him. At the same time, the Momotaro named Samadair, who killed Shiki's dad, reaches the headquarters of the Momotaro agency. His new vice captain Hina greets him and immediately starts glazing him because apparently he is a living legend among the Momotaro. However, Samadair doesn't want anything to do with the nerd, and he tells her that he works alone so he doesn't need her. Hina is hurt by his answer, but she shamelessly follows him anyway and begins asking about the headquarters and other stuff because she is from the countryside and this is her first time seeing a city. She suddenly asks about the children of Kishin, which is a topic for gossip among everyone at the agency, and Samadair finds that the only question worth answering. He tells her that a long time ago, the fearsome Oni named Kishin single-handedly brought the Momotaro agency to the brink of destruction. He knocked up a lot of women to spread his genes all over the world, so that more strong Oni could be born after him. Hina finds that odd because if Kishin really was Nick Cannon of the Oni, then there should be a lot of his kids and grandkids flooding the streets. Samadair tells her that only those Oni who have inherited Kishin's power are called children of Kishin, and there are not many of them. However, they are born at certain predictable times. Hina asks him what does he mean by that, and another Momotaro gives her the answer. He says that the children of Kishin pop out when the Momotaro side is heavily dominating the Oni. Hina is taken aback by the delinquent who just appeared in front of her out of nowhere, and he introduces himself as Shinya, the captain of the 21st unit. Hina feels nervous in front of Shinya because he seems really scary, but he is quite talkative as well. He tells her that the war between Momotaro and Oni has been going on for thousands of years, and it is actually because of Kishin and his descendants. When the Momotaro agency was first formed and almost destroyed the Oni community, Kishin was born. Ever since then, whenever they are about to end all Oni, the children of Kishin awaken their power and prolong the war. Shinya keeps cursing the Oni while scoffing at Hina, and then asks her why is it a problem that the Oni can live among the humans now. She gives him the bookish answer that Momotaro are supposed to protect humans from Oni, and if the Oni hide among ordinary humans, innocent people might get caught in the crossfire. Shinya scolds her for being a nerd and says that they have got politicians on their side, who help them clean up the mess even if their identity is exposed or if humans get caught in the crossfire. But it is those nasty politicians that create trouble for them. He says that the politicians have started demanding them to make medicine out of Oni blood among other things, and that pisses him the most. He feels that if Oni didn't hide among the humans, they wouldn't have to deal with those bastards, but Hina asks him if it isn't a good thing that people in power are helping them out. Shinya scoffs at her again, telling her that the politicians are supporting them only so that they are the first ones to be protected if things go south. He mocks Hina for being so clueless about the real nature of the world and then turns to Samadair, telling him that it must be hard for him to get a stupid country bumpkin as his partner. That is not all he wants to say, and he gets up close and personal with Samadair, telling him that maybe he is way past his prime because he lost to Shiki, who is just a brat even though he is a child of Kishin. Shinya taunts Samadair, telling him that the higher-ups put him in the headquarters because they also want him to retire from the field duty and give better candidates a chance. Shinya then walks away, telling Samadair that even if he sticks to his seat, he will rise up the ranks by killing the children of Kishin. Samadair immediately tells him to keep his hands away from Shiki because he wants to kill him personally. Shinya scoffs and says that it will be hard with just one hand left. After he leaves, Hina asks Samadair if there is only one child of Kishin, and he tells her that there are more. At the same time, Tsubakiri tells Shiki that there are always 8 children of Kishin in each generation, and he is one of them. He says that if Shiki's true power as a child of Kishin awaken, he will be a threat to the Momotaro agency, which is why they need to get rid of him. However, he feels that taking him in as a lab rat and studying what makes him special will be even better, which is exactly what he plans to do now. Shiki gets up as the zombie's power loosens its grip around him, and he curses Tsubakiri, telling him that he doesn't care about the legend of Kishin or whatever. He swears that he is not letting Tsubakiri get away after everything he has done, and immediately summons his rocket launcher. Shiki starts attacking Tsubakiri without holding back, forcing him to run around the room to dodge the attacks. However, he quickly runs out of stamina and falls to his knees, feeling dizzy from all the blood loss. He can't even move now, and Tsubakiri calls him a weakling who can't even handle this level of fighting. He notices that the building is starting to crumble down, so he orders his zombie partner to restrain Shiki and then notices that Mei is also hiding behind the wall. Tsubakiri says that maybe he will finish her off next, and Shiki is horrified as he sees Mei in danger. He asks her to run, but Mei comes out of hiding instead. She asks Tsubakiri if this is how he killed her parents, and he scoffs, saying that he doesn't even remember how he exterminated those pests. Mei asks him how could he kill her parents because they didn't do anything, but he just laughs at her, saying that Oni are insects, and they can never have human families. Shiki once again tells Mei to run away, but as he hears her name for a second time, Tsubakiri actually remembers her parents. He tells her that they begged before him to spare her life, and they looked so pathetic that he decided to let her live. However, once he told them that he would kill her later anyway, they were mortified. Mei starts crying as she hears this, but Shiki yells at her that this is not the time to cry. He gets up, telling Mei that they will defeat these bastards first and then cry together later. Tsubakiri laughs on seeing that Shiki is crying and asks how can an Oni even cry. Shiki tells him that he can cry because he has a heart, and if Tsubakiri can't understand that, he is the true demon here. Tsubakiri gets pissed at this and uses the zombie to crush Shiki even further. He then decides to end Mei's life too, and the air around her gradually gets heavier. Shiki panics at this, realizing that he will fail to protect another person at this rate. He pushes his body to its limits, hoping to find some hidden stash of strength that can help him protect Mei. Suddenly, his fingernail is ripped open, and the blood coming out of it erupts into a fire tornado. Tsubakiri is taken aback by this, because this means that Shiki is awakening his power as a child of Kishin. The children of Kishin have an unique element attribute, and Shiki has the flame attribute. Thanks to his newly awakened powers, he cancels the gravity field pressing him down and feels that he still has the energy to fight. Tsubakiri is shocked by this, but he decides to take him down before he can recover. However, the moment he tries to use his powers, a bullet from Shiki tears through his arm and sets it on fire. Tsubakiri panics, thinking that Shiki is really dangerous if he is still so powerful with just a little amount of blood. But just then, Shiki falls on his knees because he can't control the flames surrounding his body. Tsubakiri notices this too, and he immediately presses Shiki down again. He then decides to kill Mei, telling her that her parents were vermin who died pitiful deaths, and she will be like them too. Shiki curses him, asking what the hell did Mei's parents even do to him. He asks if Oni are not even allowed to live peaceful lives, and that reminds Mei of the time she asked the same question to her parents. They told her that everyone is allowed to live a peaceful and happy life, and she starts crying as Shiki says the same thing. However, Tsubakiri, the racist, gets pissed at this, and he decides to end both of them with his ultimate attack. He creates a gravity vortex with a zombie's power, and Shiki creates his gun again to fight back. Tsubakiri thinks that he is just bluffing because he doesn't have enough blood left to create ammo, but Shiki is determined to fight till the end to protect Mei's future. Meanwhile, Mei thinks about her parents and how they told her to never give up on her future. She takes a deep breath and cheers on Shiki, and suddenly, the flames surrounding him erupt once again. He gets his power back, and Tsubakiri can't understand how that can happen. However, Shiki is happy that Mei kept her promise to him, and with his recharged power, he shoots a powerful shot at the gravity vortex, tearing it apart. Tsubakiri can just watch it happen, and then the explosion from Shiki's attack hits him head-on, dealing huge damage. As the severely injured Tsubakiri lies on the ground, he regrets underestimating Shiki. He can't believe that he lost to someone who recently awakened his powers, but he realizes that he is too injured to get out of this situation alive. He crawls forward towards his zombie partner Manaka, recalling how they first met. A few years ago, Tsubakiri was just a researcher in the Momotaro agency, and he had no interest in joining the combat forces. He was satisfied with his job of experimenting on the Oni they captured and spent most of his time in his lab. But then one day, Manaka came to recruit him into his team. Tsubakiri immediately hated Manaka's habit of meddling into the lives of others, and he refused his offer. However, his refusal had the same value as I have in my family, and the next day, he was transferred to Manaka's squad because of orders from the higher-ups. Tsubakiri found that Manaka had the aura and charisma of a leader, and he was kind enough to offer prayers for the Oni he killed. Tsubakiri could never understand any of that, because after his parents were killed by an Oni, he slowly lost his emotions. He didn't care that much about his parents anyway, because they were always busy with the agency's work and never gave any time to him. One day, he shared his story with Manaka, who immediately took him to his place and introduced him to his wife and daughter. After that day, Manaka often invited him to have dinner with his family, and slowly Tsubakiri started feeling the warmth of human emotions again. However, he was still confused about why Manaka would keep a family when they could be a liability to him and his job. Manaka told him that his family gave him the motivation to do his best and return home alive, but soon, that would become the cause of his death. One day, Manaka and his team raided an apartment after receiving reports about an Oni, and they found a kid there. Manaka saw his daughter in the boy and couldn't attack him, giving him the chance to flee. However, once the Oni boy reached the streets, he went berserk and killed everyone he saw. Unfortunately, Manaka's wife and daughter were out shopping at the same time, and the berserk Oni attacked them too. Manaka rushed to save them, but he was too late. His wife and daughter lost their lives, and he also suffered fatal injuries while fighting the Oni. In his last moments, Manaka regretted showing compassion to the enemies, and declared that all Oni must be ruthlessly eliminated on spot. He asked Tsubakiri to use his corpse so that he could keep fighting the Oni even after his death. Tsubakiri accepted his request, and by controlling Manaka's corpse, he soon rose to the rank of a squad captain. Even now, he has not given up, and he swears that he will keep fighting with Manaka by his side until they exterminate all Oni. He tries to crawl towards him, but then suddenly, Manaka's body catches fire and Tsubakiri falls unconscious after losing all hope. On the other hand, Shiki can't believe that he won the fight. As he stares at the ceiling dumbfounded, Mei approaches him and suddenly a huge rock falls from the ceiling, falling right next to her. The sound of the rock falling snaps Shiki back to his senses, and he tells Mei that they need to get out of this place immediately. However, he doesn't have any energy left, and he collapses on the floor, bleeding out profusely. At the same time, in the tunnel, Mami Momogi has shut herself inside a barrier after realizing that she can't win. Nato decides to leave her alone because she doesn't have enough power to seal off their base again. Instead, he decides to rescue everyone trapped inside before the building collapses. Nato, Jin, and others run to the main hall, and to their surprise, they find Kyoya treating the unconscious Shiki. Jin asks him how the hell did he survive, and Kyoya says that he was almost on the verge of death, but he drank some of his blood that got splattered on the roof. That allowed him to stay alive. After hearing this, Nato moves on to deal with Tsubakiri, telling him that he looks pathetic. However, before finishing him off, he asks what he thinks about Shikin's Kijin powers. Tsubakiri replies that Shiki was really strong, but it seemed like he was burning his life force away. Jin gets curious about the whole Kijin business, but Kyoya says he will explain things once they get to safety. Soon after that, Momogi arrives at the hall, and she is horrified to see Tsubakiri dead. He had changed after meeting Manaka, and following in his mentor's footsteps, he even started a family, but now Momogi is mortified at the thought of telling Tsubakiri's wife and newborn daughter that he died in battle. A few hours later, Shiki wakes up completely recovered from his injuries. Kyoya and Nato are there to keep a watch over him, and Nato passes him a bottle of water as he remarks that he really defeated a Momotaro captain. Shiki finally realizes that he won against Tsubakiri, but he immediately gets sad because nothing can bring back Mei's parents. Nato quietly opens the windows, saying that they lost too much to count this as a win, but they should be glad that they survived. Soon after that, Shiki and the rest of his classmates get ready to return to their school. Kyoya has decided to adopt Mei, and he asks everyone to visit them again. As the students board the ship, Mei calls out to Shiki, thanking him with a bright smile, and he tells her that he will come to meet her again. Once they reach the academy, Nato starts teaching the students about how the Oni agency is divided into 3 parts. There is the combat unit, the medical unit, and the recon unit, and once they graduate, the students will be assigned to those units depending on their abilities. However, the classroom is a mess with Shiki's brain overheating and making audible sounds as he tries to focus on his lessons. Kuina is trying to groom Rokuro, and Akari is sleeping without a care. Nato gets the most pissed at Akari, and he wakes him up with a sonic boom producing snap. After that, he declares that the class ends here, and now everyone has to choose a partner for their dorm rooms. While the students have different opinions about sharing a room with each other, Juji points out that one of the boys will be left out because they are odd-numbered. Nato announces that whoever is left behind will share a room with him, and everyone suddenly begins to see the classmates in a much favorable light. They are still debating how they divide up the rooms, but then Kuina declares that she wants to partner up with Rokuro. Everyone is flabbergasted by this, and Juji gets jealous of Rokuro, but Nato makes it clear that boys and girls get separate rooms. Kuina asks who the hell is going to take care of Rokuro then, and Shiki asks her what the hell does she mean by that. Kuina describes in detail what she plans to do with Rokuro, and in short, it involves 4 rounds of raw dogging daily among other things. Well, Shiki gets as pissed as Juji on hearing this, and both of them start ganging up on Kuina. Shiki asks Homer to talk some sense into Kuina because he doesn't want Rokuro to have all the fun. However, Homer packs up her bag and apologizes, saying that she is the extra person here, and if she just leaves, their numbers will even out. She says that she will live outside in a cardboard box, and Shiki feels bad just hearing it. Anyway, Shiki, Juji, and Akari tell Jin that he needs to go to jail, which means sharing a room with Nato, since he is the biggest loner here. Jin coldly replies that he is fine on his own, and that pisses off all 3 of them. They call him a moron who can't even read the room, and then Shiki tells Akari that the 2 of them should share a room. Akari immediately refuses, saying that he hates being around people, and Juji feels betrayed and left out. As he sulks that no one wants him as their roommate, Rokuro offers a hand of friendship, asking if he wants to become his roommate because he is afraid of Kuina. However, Juji gets even more pissed at this and asks Rokuro if he wants to make him even more jealous by talking about how Kuina always gives him the Gluck Gluck 3000 before going to school. Rokuro's mental health takes a hit because of that, and while he is sulking by himself, Akari tells Shiki to share a room with Nato instead. Shiki refuses, saying that he wants to talk about crushes and stuff with his roommate before falling to sleep. He talks about how excited he is to go on a school trip with everyone because he has never been to one before, as he was suspended from middle school and then expelled right as he joined high school. Everyone is surprised to hear that Shiki went to school, and he asks them why are they so surprised. Juji replies that his powers awakened when he was young, so he never got the chance to go to school. The others have similar stories, and Shiki realizes that they were worse off than him. Anyway, Nato tells them to quit wasting time and decide their roommates already, and Shiki says that they should use the rock-paper-scissors-split method to decide who they get to pair with. Everyone agrees with the idea, and as they throw their signs, Juji turns out to be the odd one out. He is devastated because he now gets to share a room with Nato. On the other hand, Shiki is feeling lucky that he avoided Nato, but then he finds that his partner is Jin, and honestly, that is not much better for him. He is disappointed because Jin is the least fun person in the group, but Jin, on the other hand, is curious about Shiki. Before returning to the academy, he talked with Kyoya about Shiki and learned the details about Kishin's children. He is a bit salty about it now and tells Shiki not to get overconfident just because he is born with special powers. After that, the classroom becomes as chaotic as ever, and Shiki starts thinking about Mei. He wonders how she is doing and hopes that she is working hard for a future where she can be safe and happy. At the same time, in the Momotaro agency headquarters, the delinquent named Shinya is also on the move. He thinks that if he takes down Shiki, who defeated Tsubakiri, he will score a lot of points and get promoted to a squad captain. He tells his team to get ready because they are departing immediately, and they tell him that they don't have permission to go off on their own. However, Shinya doesn't care about that because as long as he gets results, the higher-ups won't complain about his methods. A couple days later, Shiki and his classmates are enjoying a hot public bath after another harsh day at school. While Shiki whines and about Nato being a demon teacher, Jin walks away because he is done bathing. Hikari also takes his leave because he is tired of Shiki's yapping, but at least Juji agrees with him. Rokuro, on the other hand, knows that Kuina will be waiting for him outside to spoil him rotten, and though it is any man's dream, this wimp is terrified of that idea. Juji and Shiki think that he is just bragging, but as Rokuro assures them that he is terrified of carrying and dominating mommies, they hear Kuina's voice as she tries to enter the boys' bath to be with Rokuro. The three boys have different reactions to this situation, but as the door opens, they find Nato there instead of Kuina, who is being restrained by the other boys. Nato tells everyone that they are going to conduct an emergency evacuation drill and everyone has to gather in the gym in 10 minutes. Well, Shiki reaches there late and begins telling Nato that it is his fault to disturb him when he was relaxing. Nato isn't having any of his bull and asks him if he would like to train in the storm raging outside if he has a problem with the evacuation drill, and Shiki immediately changes his stance. Anyway, Nato begins his lecture, telling the students that if they can't act as a team and take swift actions during emergencies, their chances of survival go drastically down. He says that this exercise is to train them to work in a team and then points towards the supplies kept in the corner of the hall. He tells them to stay inside the gym until further notice while he leaves to patrol the campus. Everyone is relieved when Nato finally leaves them, but now they have no idea what to do. Jin is the first one to notice a pot among the supplies and Shiki says that it might have a bomb inside. He points his finger gun at it, saying that the best way to dispose of a bomb is to shoot it from a distance. But Ikari and Homer tell him to stop because even a monkey can tell that the pot has their dinner. Shiki laughs, telling them that he was just joking, but Ikari gets mad at him and calls him an idiot sandwich. Shiki gets into an argument with him, but that ends pretty quickly as Homer begins to apologize for offending him. Anyway, while they fight, Kuina decides to get some food for her dear Rokuro, and she finds that it is their staple curry and rice. As everyone sits down to eat, Shiki starts acting fussy and asks if anyone wants his bean sprouts because he hates any food that looks green. Homer tells him not to be a picky eater, and even though she loves stir-fried bean sprouts, she doesn't love them enough to accept someone's leftovers. Just then, Shiki notices Ikari near the pot because he finished his first serving, and he immediately swallows all his food in 3 gulps before rushing to get a second serving. Jin watches them from a distance, and even though he wants to rush to get another serving as well, he can't eat fast because he finds it hard to tolerate spices. He doesn't want anyone to think that he is a wimp, so he just eats at a slow pace. On the other hand, Kuina asks Rokuro if he wants another serving as well, and he replies that he is full, and if he eats too much, he gets nauseous. He is low-key jealous of the morons who can eat all they want, but he is also glad that they have got pudding along with the curry. He tells Kuina how much he loves pudding, but this retard gets jealous at this and asks him if he loves pudding more than he loves her. Rokuro doesn't even know what to say as Kuina starts shaking him, but then she decides to make pudding for him later, and he thanks her for that. This suddenly changes Kuina's mood, and she tells Rokuro that he can have her pudding too. Anyway, once everyone is done eating their dinner and dessert, Homer finds that 1 pack of pudding is left. She asks if anyone missed theirs, but everyone has had their share of pudding. She then asks if anyone wants the extra pack, and Jin decides to stop acting tough and raises his hand. However, Shiki swipes off the pudding from Homer's hand instantly. Jin puts down his hand in frustration, but Shiki sees it just in time. He tells Jin to stop hesitating if he is hungry and offers him the final plate of curry he was saving for later, but his genuine gesture only pisses off Jin. At the same time, Nato is inspecting all the rooms one by one as a part of the emergency evacuation drill. Just then, the green messenger pig of the academy comes there, and Nato picks up the phone to find the principal on the other side. The principal tells him that he doesn't need to stick to the rules of the emergency drill, because they both know that there is no real danger on the campus. He tells Nato to go and spend some quality time with his students, but then realizes that the students would be more comfortable without him there. Nato agrees, but he just hopes that his students can get along well with each other, but he doesn't see it happening anytime soon. He begins talking about how everyone has their emotional baggage, and getting along with others is not easy for any of them. Back in the gym, Jin gets ready to fight Shiki for the pudding, and Shiki calls him a coward who can't even say that he wants extra pudding. This angers Jin even more, and he releases his blood chainsaw, prompting Shiki to summon his bazooka as well. Jin shoots the chainsaw at him first and Shiki blocks it, but just as he is about to return fire, Nato arrives there. He is disappointed that they were risking their lives over a pudding, and even more disappointed that they ate all the food and didn't leave any for him. Everyone is shocked to hear that Nato was supposed to eat with them, and Homer starts apologizing because she ate all the bean sprouts. The other students are more shameless, and they tell Nato that it is his fault for not making it clear earlier, and he can't deny their logic. Anyway, he tells them that using their abilities or fighting in the gym is strictly forbidden, and anyone who leaves the hall without permission will be expelled. He then leaves with the pudding but forgets the spoon. Homer wonders if they should go after him and give him the spoon, but Kuina tells her to forget about it because it is not worth risking expulsion. Everyone decides to go to sleep after that, and Shiki gets excited because he just wants to hang out with people his age. Jin is the exact opposite, and he keeps his distance from everyone. Meanwhile, Kuina tells Rokuro to get inside her sleeping bag so that they can cuddle all night, and he is really not into that idea. This pisses off the pervert Juji, who wants to get lucky as well, and Akari is the complete opposite of him. He is mentally an old-fashioned dude who thinks that boys and girls should start dating only after the age of 20, and he doesn't even like the idea that they are all sleeping together. He immediately uses a curtain to divide the hall into 2 parts to separate the boys and the girls, but Shiki is still having fun as this is like a school trip for him. Well, Akari decides to join the fun and says that it is time for horror stories. Shiki starts sweating because he is low-key terrified of ghosts and stuff, but the other boys are all eager to share spooky stories. Akari tells Jin that he is going to share a story with them as well, and Shiki hopes that Jin shows disinterest because then he can get an excuse to chicken out as well. However, Jin has no problem with ghost stories, and Shiki realizes he is screwed. Rokuro goes first, talking about how he feels like someone is always staring at him ever since he came to the academy, but everyone tells him that it is just Kuina. Next up, Juji talks about how terrified he is every time he hears Nato's footsteps while he is wrestling with his snake. Shiki is glad that no story has been about ghosts yet, but then Akari starts reciting a story about the ghost of a woman on a mountain pass. Suddenly, the light goes out and the terrified Shiki lets out a wild scream. He acts cool and tries to pass blame when Juji turns on the flashlight, but there are bigger things to worry about. Jin says that it seems the rumors about ghost stories attracting real ghosts are true, and then points out to a ghost standing in the corner. It is just the principal who is trying to spook the kids to make them bond with each other a little bit, but Shiki, Rokuro, and Juji are terrified. They cling to Akari, who pushes them away because this is the first time he has seen a real ghost and he wants to become a ghostbuster. He charges at the principal, who blows him away with a force field, and Jin decides to go next. The cowardly trio latch on to him next, and as he tries to get rid of them, Shiki lets his fear take over his reasons. He summons his gun and begins firing randomly, blowing up the room without even aiming straight at the principal. When Nato arrives at the gym later, he is aghast to see what has happened, and the principal asks him to tell the students that it was just a bad dream and there was no ghost whatsoever. The next day, everyone is convinced that they had a bad dream because of the stormy night, when Nato enters the classroom, telling them that they are going to Tokyo for their next field exercise. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Sa bawat umaga, sikat ng araw, hiling ko'y tahimik ng mundo. Walang gulo, walang sigawan, pagmamahalan ng siyang mangingibabaw. Kapayapaan,